Once again, welcome everyone throughout the conversation today. If you have any questions or any feedback or need clarification on anything, I definitely recommend you use the Q&A feature throughout your Zoom framework. You'll see it there. Your question will be reviewed towards the end of the conversation, and we'll make sure that we help to address it. But I'm super excited to have the group here today. I'm the only one without an interesting background, so fully noted for next time. I'll make sure to find a cool image or to be somewhere interesting next time. But it's such a privilege and an honor to be here with everyone today. So I'm going to kick it off. So my name is Joseph. I work at the CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers of America. I'm going to be moderating today's talk, which is, again, such a privilege and an honor to be with such great creatives and professionals who are helping to lead the way when it comes to the Latinx and Hispanic community. I'm happy Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month. It's super exciting. We're here, we made it, and we have a bit of time to go, but I didn't want to let everyone know that today's conversation is actually a part of a professional development series that the CFDA is doing in collaboration with ELLE Magazine. So thank you so much to them. So we're definitely glad to get the group together today. And this talk in particular is really sort of chatting through the ways that we as the fashion industry can support the Latinx and Hispanic community with social and cultural and immigration resources. I think it's always incredible for us to sort of lay the groundwork when it comes to understanding some of our challenges, but also like, what's the how? How do we actually do it? What are some ways that we can actually get involved? I think it's incredible to be able to chat through that. So we're going to do that today. There are two quick things I wanted to address before we get into introductions. So the first of which is, in an effort to be as inclusive as possible, you'll hear me sort of using the terms Latinx and Hispanic. I recognize that not everyone uses the same terminology. Language changes, language evolves. So in an effort, as I said, to be as inclusive as possible, the panelists today and all of you, listening in and watching are encouraged to use your own terminology that you're comfortable with when it comes to addressing the community. And then once again, any questions, please use the Q&A feature throughout today's conversation to add in your question. I'm going to get started with some introductions before we head into the actual conversation. So once again, my name is Joseph Maglieri. I've been at CFDA for 6 years. I work on all things related to social impact, as well as New York Fashion Week with the rest of our team at CFDA doing such incredible work. Before CFDA, I was at Opening Ceremony and Uniqlo USA. And what else? I'm a Leo. And I am excited to be here today helping to represent Puerto Rico. I was raised by a beautiful, strong Puerto Rican woman, and the other panelists here today are also going to shout out which regions and countries they're representing. So that's me. I'm going to hand it over to Albania if you want to get us started with intros, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joseph. It's a great pleasure to be here with you guys today. Yamilka and Lauren, very nice to meet you guys as well. And like you said, well, I'm Albania Rosario. I'm the founder and CEO at Fashion Designers for Latin America, which in Spanish stands for Federación de Diseñadores de Latinoamérica. It is a fashion platform that provides our designers an opportunity to be able to showcase their talent to the world, be able to have an opportunity to be seen and be placed within this fashion competitive industry. I am from the Dominican Republic. I came here 21 years ago. I came to New York City to go to college. I didn't speak any English then. Luckily, I'm still learning. And I am blessed and highly favored to be able to have created a platform that started 11 years ago. And it was just a simple vision from a Dominican girl and big dreams in the Big Apple. And today we can call a vision a reality where hundreds of designers around the world and emerging talent are able to have an opportunity to have a platform that they can feel safe, they can feel included, and they can be part of the industry, which is, fashion industry. So I am grateful to be here today, and thank you so much for watching us.
Great, Lauren, do you want to take over next?
Sure. I'm Lauren Rodriguez. I am the founder and creative director of a women's wear line called LOROD. It's based in New York City, and we manufacture all in the United States. I am in New York by way of Los Angeles, but my family is by way of Mexico. So I'm here representing Mexico by way of LA and into New York. Yeah, excited to be here. Honored.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Jamilka, do you want to go next? Then we'll get started.
Sure. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamilka Mena. I am the Director of Immigration Initiatives here at the Hispanic Federation. I'm also in New York. I come from the Dominican Republic and then also an immigrant. So ALBANIA, we share so much in common already. So the Hispanic Federation is a nonprofit membership and advocacy organization that empowers and advances the needs of the Hispanic community and focuses on low-income, marginalized immigrant Latinos specifically. We have offices all across the country, including here in New York and Washington, DC, Connecticut, North Carolina, Florida, and Puerto Rico. And we have a bunch of issue areas, including immigration and others. So I'm very excited to be here. Like I said, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I love Hispanic Heritage Month. It's just a way for us to kind of come together, share our culture, and much more than that. So excited to share in this conversation and happy to be talking about supporting immigrant workers in the garment and fashion industry today.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much, Jamilka. And it's actually, serendipitous that we finished with you, because my first question I have for today is for you. So I really want to start today's conversation with really understanding the landscape when it comes to supporting the Latinx community through social cultural immigration resources. So with that in mind, a lot of your work at Hispanic Federation focuses on the distribution and the access to resources for immigrant communities, specifically through legal and social services. Can you help us understand what some of these key challenges are that you observe in your work?
Sure, and I'll start off by saying that, immigrants are everywhere. A lot of times when we think of immigrants, we think of undocumented immigrants and the crisis that's happening at the border. But if we take it back to, US history back in 11th grade, we all know that this country was founded by immigrants. So technically everyone here is an immigrant, no matter if they're 10th generation American. So a lot of the services that are exclusive to immigrants really focus on the underserved and under-resourced immigrant population, and that happens to be undocumented immigrants. And I think the major challenge with anyone working in the immigration field is the intersectionality of it all. And I know we hear that word a lot, right? There are positives in intersectionality, being able to create systems and programs that are intersectional to serve many purposes. But for the immigrant community that has less access to so many of these things, for example, less access to learning English for free in their community, sometimes less access to healthcare because they are undocumented and therefore can't apply for X programs. All of those things create a challenge when it comes to immigration legal services. So those attorneys who are working to provide some sort of status to this immigrant or an immigrant and their family will also have to think about mental health. We'll also have to think about education and health and economic empowerment and cash assistance and food stamps. And sometimes the resources are not there for organizations to provide such a holistic service. And organizations do go beyond what they're, tasked to do, because they know that as immigrant serving organizations, there will be more than just that one thing that an immigrant needs. So I would consider that the highest challenge. And that's why it's super important to have conversations like today, as well as, find creative and innovative partnerships to ensure that if maybe my organization can only do legal services, then I'll reach out to X organization that can do mental health and X that can do education, and be able to work together to support immigrants in that way.
That's so incredible. I'm so glad that you used that term and really helped kick us off using the term and the concept of intersectionality, because it's so critical to understanding the nuances between the creative needs, the societal needs, as well as the cultural needs, cultural legal services that are also present. I want to shift over to you, ALBANIA, when it comes to when you started FDLA, right? So the designer community that you've helped to create, what was not being served and delivered to the community that you work with when you began FDLA? What were they not getting elsewhere that inspired you to really begin this work?
Thank you, Joseph, for that question. And I believe that still till today, our upcoming emerging designers, especially from Latin America, are not getting enough exposure. These emerging talents are coming from all over Latin America, whose creative abilities are overflowing, but financial resources are not getting enough exposure. They're not getting enough marketing. They're not being discovered. They're not being positioned within the fashion industry. So here at the FDLA Fashion Platform, that's what we offer them. We offer the support that they need to be inclusive, to have them being part of the industry, and to get the exposure and the marketing and the placement that they deserve with their talents that they're being given.
That's great. And have you really seen that evolve? So when you started it, to today, are a lot of those challenges the same? And if there are new ones, what are they?
Well, the challenges are being a little less now that we finally have the FDLA platform. It's been established for 11 years now. We started with 6 designers that are from Latin America, but they live in New York City. That's our very first show that happened in 11 years ago in Washington Heights in Uptown. To be specifically, we work with 6 designers from Latin America, but they were already living in New York. And today, 11 years later, I am proud and I'm honored to say that we work with over 200 FDLA members, fashion designers, who travel exclusively every year, every season, to be part of the FDLA platform. So those challenges are still there, but now we have more opportunities. We created more opportunities for these upcoming emerging talents to be able to be part of the scene, especially here at New York Fashion Week.
That's so excellent and inspiring. I think, Albani, what you're touching on, and YAMILKA as well, really that intersectionality is coming up, right? The different types of needs and resources that are being sought after. I think understanding the landscape is so key. And Lauren, as an entrepreneur, as a designer, I know that your Mexican-American identity is so important to you. How much has your heritage really impacted your relationship to the fashion industry, especially when it comes to design or when it comes to manufacturing? I know that you have a really interesting family story as well, with your family, of your Mexican heritage. Can you speak on that a bit?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I actually have sort of garment manufacturing historically on my mother's side, back in, like the 30s and 40s, denim and designing sort of like naval military uniforms. And on my father's side, him and his 13 brothers and sisters and parents were migrant workers in California. So there is sort of this like deep history and functional garment that I feel really inspired by. And it definitely deepened my desire to manufacture in the US. So that's been a really important part of sort of the ethos of LOROD, and, we feel really strongly about that. So I suppose it's sort of interesting also that I look to Americana for inspiration, and then like the actual hands that are manufacturing these clothing, primarily in Los Angeles, are of Mexican descent. So there's a lot of people who come over from Mexico who are actually like cutting and sewing these garments. And it's pretty amazing getting to like actually manufacture locally. So you're able to, foster these beautiful relationships with the people who are actually touching and creating the clothing. Yeah. It's been cool. I think there's a cool space for Mexican Americans that's sort of being carved out.
Exactly. And I love that you and your brand touch on the concept of Americana and really drilling down on what that means. Where do we get to sort of understanding what Americana is? And if you peel back the layers, really looking at the contributions of the Mexican community and really understanding those regional contributions and how it sort of informs the way we understand, Americana. So I think that's really key. And I know that you also, with LOROD, have this emphasis on, I think you call it the uniform, that you really sort of explore through that manufacturing history and that viewpoint through your heritage.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely drawn to sort of simplicity in construction and the high quality. I mean, not so much anymore, but historically there was a really beautiful quality in the manufacturing of military garments and therefore uniforms. But yeah, it does tie strongly back to sort of my familial history, which I'm obviously feel strongly about.
And you're wearing LOROD today?
I am.
Okay, great. I wanted to make sure. I know that wasn't something I was planning on asking, so I got nervous for a second as I was saying it, making sure it was, in case you were going to say it's Comme des Garçons. So it's great. It's so lovely. I want to shift back over to you, YAMILKA, and now that we've had this groundwork laid for really understanding the landscape, I want us to talk more specifically about resources. And in your work that you do with Hispanic Federation, your leadership, what are some of those key resources that you provide that everyone should be aware of that you want to share with the group today? I'd really love to drill down on that.
Sure. I know that right now the main conversation that's happening on a national level is this push toward citizenship for all or citizenship for a subsection of the undocumented people. Population in the United States. However, there are so many other we call them immigration benefits that people are eligible for. Sometimes because they don't have access to the services, or they don't know that community-based organization, or maybe they don't feel comfortable, but they're there. And we encourage everyone, if they need support, to find their community-based organization. More than likely, there's one or two around the corner from your home. But today I really want to highlight one that is very recent, and it's very important, and especially for workers in general, especially undocumented workers. So the New York State legislature in March, as they adopted the budget for the state, created a $2.1 billion fund that they're calling the Excluded Workers Fund. So as we all know, during the pandemic, we were calling essential workers, and at 7 p.m. here in New York, we were out our windows clapping and cheering. But excluded workers and essential workers who did not have access to unemployment insurance or stimulus checks could not survive with claps and thank yous, which I'm sure everyone they appreciated that. But the Excluded Workers Fund that was just recently passed and opened, I believe, sometime in the beginning of August, provides direct cash assistance to undocumented immigrants who were affected by COVID and were not eligible for these federal aid. So this is a huge step just across the country in the New York State legislature to be able to place immigrants first and be able to put money in their pockets to help them, move past somewhat, because it's a one-time fund, move past what's been happening and help them recover somewhat with what's happening in COVID. So again, there's so many resources out there, legal services, social services, but the Excluded Workers Fund is something that's happening right now. So if you or anyone know of people who may be eligible, the Department of Labor website has great resources, and there's so many organizations, including us, who are helping with outreach and application assistance across New York State.
That's so interesting and great to hear, and that work that DOL is doing and your emphasis on the Excluded Workers Fund, it sort of reminds me of, I was in a conversation last week, and the person who was leading the conversation is a Harvard business professor, Professor Ryan Buell, and he, in a lot of his work, emphasizes what he calls and sort of coined as hidden work. And a lot of the pandemic has really shown a light on what the hidden work is, right? What our economy is actually benefiting from, well, how this work actually gets done. So to hear that these changes, these very, very recent changes, and this kind of support in a real actionable way is happening is so inspiring. Do you see that happening across different states as well? I know you referenced New York. Is that something different regions are also enacting?
So there have been, especially during the pandemic, some states, and I believe California was one of them, who had expanded a cash fund, but it wasn't necessarily directly the state. It was like in collaboration with like a philanthropy. New York City, did that as well, with some philanthropies to provide direct cash assistance. And I think it is a great step forward, and it's something to highlight for sure. But it's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what is needed for immigrant communities, right? It's great to have, and just as an FYI, the fund provides up to $15,000 in a one-time payment, which is roughly the low end of unemployment insurance for 12 months. And that is still not enough. There's people who have back rents for the past year plus, or don't even have a place to live. And that money will just be enough for maybe a couple of months. So we need to think long-term in terms of the economic recovery of immigrants. And I think these conversations and highlighting what the needs are and what collaborations may look like are super important to make the voices of immigrants unheard. And that topic of the hidden work, I think the pandemic pulled back the curtains of so many things that were happening, the inequities, and even more so in the undocumented communities, right? We know here in New York, right, the lights in New York City were kept on by Uber drivers, by our delivery workers, by the undocumented people cleaning our hospitals and our grocery stores, because we had the privilege to stay at home. I mean, I think we're all either at home or in an office, but there's people who not once had the ability to work remotely. So I think highlighting those inequities and being able to put forth solutions is a very big part of the work that immigrant advocacy organizations like ours are doing.
That is so profound and I think so insightful as well. And really, I'm so happy you touched on that, because especially in that funding, right, that 15,000 you're talking about, I think at face value, it's very exciting and it is certainly helpful. But then as you push back against it, it's like, where is this, how far does this go? Is this enough? Are we addressing the root causes? Where do we go after here as well? Thank you so much. And Albania, I want to have you chat about some of the resources you provide through FDLA, right? So your work with designers, really, the needs that designers have in building their brands and businesses runs the gamut. It runs the gamut from manufacturing to Fashion Week to marketing and communications, staffing as well. What are some of those key resources that you provide to your community and that you feel are important to speak on today, so that we all have a better understanding of the help that's being given?
Absolutely. Before I answer your question, Joseph, I just kind of want to go back to YAMILKA real quick just to bring up the Hispanic, and I kind of feel what you mentioned, that what you guys are doing with the community, it's definitely amazing, especially through the funds that are available, because I am a perfect example of the Hispanic Federation being a supporter, a partner for the FDLA platform for several years now. So I want to openly thank you for what you guys are doing to help platforms like ours to keep going and to be sustained. So thank you so much for that. And I just didn't want to have, not the time to say that to you, but, and now going back to your question, Joseph, the resources that we offer the designers and what we're providing to them throughout the FDLA platform, I want to say that the FDLA platform opens a window of opportunities for them, not only in the marketing aspect, but also in the business aspect to them. We help them do business internationally. We help them careers to continue to grow each year by how we do this. We start by having them come to be part of one of the scenes at New York Fashion Week, but that's now everything that we do. This is like one of the many things we do for the designers. We help them with their business plan. We help them position them with different stores and buyers. We also help them find the right manufacturers that they need at a low cost to help them cultivate their business and to help them continue to grow. And that's we work to them all year round. We work starting from the shows all year round, and not only to sponsor them here in New York City, but also we take them to international platforms, such as events in Dubai, Switzerland, and South Korea, so that their work can be seen even more globally. So those are some of the things that we do to help our designers to continue to build their business.
That's so exciting. And I know after you said it was 11 years since you had this work going, where do you see the needs next year, right? Is it a continuation of what you're working on this year? What are some sort of new endeavors or new projects or new avenues that you're looking to go down when it comes to FDLA's growth and support for designers?
So personally, what I'm thinking for FDLA and the new endeavors that we were looking into, it's give more opportunities, not only for the designers it's themselves, but also for everyone that's involved in the industry. We do work with a lot of dozens and dozens of people that are not necessarily a fashion designer, but they are in the industry. They could either be makeup artists, pattern makers, dressers, you know, there's so many people. There is a huge community behind what people see at the forefront during the shows. So one of my personal goals is to continue to provide a place of work and to continue to offer them opportunities so that they can continue to build their business and they can continue to sustain the business they already have, starting from the designers, but all the way to the whole community that is behind fashion. So that's one of the personal goals that I have within the FDLA platform. And of course, continue to show the world how much talent we have in Latin America.
I love to hear that. You know, something that we've heard a lot at CFDA and we've really been pushing more and more is to break through notions of regionalism and regional talent, right? I think we look to New York as the hub. It is one of the biggest cities, you know, for talents and creatives. Los Angeles, of course, too. But as we push through and really uncover where talent is, it's everywhere. So absolutely. I love that you spoke on that. And Lauren, I want to shift over to you and your work with LOROD. It's such a beautiful brand, and you've really done such a great job in evoking a sense of social responsibility and cultural awareness, while of course emphasizing excellent design and a really strong aesthetic point of view. How do you balance the two, and how do you sort of ensure that through line continues as LOROD grows and develops, like balancing that social responsibility as well as the need, you know, to grow the brand, you know, to sell product and to really promote design?
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for the kind words. It's difficult. It's definitely, in terms of like our primary effort to sort of like sustain jobs and labor in the United States in terms of manufacturing, it's difficult. It's beautiful and exciting and incredible, and it feels really good, but the cost of goods is really expensive. Obviously there's benefits, a million benefits to it, but you know, when I launched, I didn't necessarily want to be selling clothes for as high of prices as I have to sell them for, just because the cost of making in the United States is quite high. So that's been definitely a challenge. And there's, you know, as you grow and your numbers get higher and you can actually manufacture higher quantities of things, those prices go down. So that's been helpful as we've grown. But I think in terms of, you know, diversity and us embedding ourselves in like our community, I think since the beginning, it's been quite embedded in LOROD that our platform and our output should reflect our community. So for me, it means diversity within like our hires. For our team, it means that the individuals that we cast for photo shoots and campaigns and presentations or shows, we're representing different colors and shapes and sizes and genders and our historical references that we're looking at. So the things that we pull, you know, when you're looking at Americana, you look at like the Dust Bowl and Dorothea Lange, and it's a lot of white male images. And so I think diversifying what we're looking at so that we're not just pulling from this like classic American working class, you know, because really American working class means a lot of things. So yeah, I think in every element of the company, it's been important for us to have this deep pool of diversity and be inclusive, because when I started, I was just out of college and have this beautiful community of people and creatives, and I wanted the things I was creating to reflect that. So the people who are taking our photos, the people who are editing our photos and making our clothes and working in our office should be diverse.
And I think that, Lauren, is so excellent because it relates directly to what ALBANIA was talking about, where, and this sort of theme that's come up about hidden work and the hidden contributors that we see. And Yamilka really kicked that part of this conversation off, where, you know, it really is not just the sort of the end project, the end product, but really everyone that has been a part of that process, that, you know, their cultural, intellectual identity contributions are embedded in that. And I think that LOROD's done such a great job as a brand to really emphasize that. I think more and more, and feel free to disagree with me, I'd love your take on this. A lot of fashion brands are asked to step up to also be cultural role models, to also be social responsibility role models, to be transparent in their beliefs and transparent in their supply chain and the types of communities that they work with. You know, do you feel that sense of, maybe not pressure, but that sense of expectation?
I do and I don't. I think there's a lot of brands that you can see it's not authentic. I think especially after a lot of the BLM protests that were happening, there was a lot of large companies that were sort of like jumping on this diversity train. That on the one hand, it's great that people of color are getting the space to do these things, but it doesn't feel authentic. And my hope is that it eventually becomes commonplace and normal and accepted among the fashion industry. It's just been built into LOROD since the beginning. And it's something that I feel strongly about. So it's always been a part of the company. So I don't feel like a pressure necessarily. But I do think that people should feel pressure. I do think that there's like a definite need for transparency in the supply chain and where you're manufacturing and who you're working with across the board. I definitely think it's a positive pressure that is happening.
I love the way you put that. You're like, it's the pressure's different for me because it's been embedded in what I do. But for those who maybe haven't, that word accountable become kind of a dirty word in a way, but it's so important for those that, you know, we need to be holding accountable. I hope the pressure's felt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's certainly a part of it. And being mindful of time, I want to make sure I touch on sort of balancing the personal and the professional. So Jamilka, heading back over to you and your work, I'd love for you to share some everyday actionable ways that the fashion industry, the fashion community, even if it's not through their company, but them as individuals, can get involved in supporting the important work that you're doing. Do you have some examples of some of that everyday real life actions people can take?
Yeah, I think when it comes to supporting the immigrant communities, and specifically, you know, given that it's HHM and our sorry, I live in New York. Given that we are the Hispanic Federation, our focus is really Latinos and Hispanic immigrants, right? In my department, I think there's so many ways, right? There's always the quick and dirty way is volunteering, right? There's so many organizations that do clinic-based models for legal services, and they always need a volunteer to help usher or to help just write in applications for citizenship, for example. There's always immigrant resource fair happening that people ask for volunteers, you know, to sit at a table and just hand out pamphlets and things like that. But I think on a broader scope, I think the fashion industry, you know, I forgot to mention this earlier in my earlier remarks, but I'm sure you all know more than I do, but the garment industry, especially in New York City, was started off by immigrants, right? Jewish and Polish immigrants who landed here in New York City via, you know, passing through Ellis Island. And that was the birth of kind of the garment industry in America. And till this day, there's a lot of immigrant workers working in manufacturing and garments. And I think a great example of the hidden work tied in with the fashion industry, I remember during the pandemic, a lot of clothing brands, well, maybe smaller clothing brands, were making masks, right? Masks, PPE, and like shifting their work to support the overall, you know, society in this tough time. So other examples of being able to work together, I would say Maybe, designers or brands can work with philanthropy, right? The bigger designers and brands can work with philanthropy to fund a lot of these organizations. A lot of these larger scale brands have social and corporate responsibility, and maybe like a philanthropy section. That's always a great way. As I mentioned earlier, we're typically under-resourced, but still doing, the honest work of supporting immigrants. And I think ultimately it's probably more important for small to large to individuals to just support the immigrant communities. Like I mentioned, the garment industry and fashion industry still relies on immigrants, whether documented or not, to work behind the scenes. And it's important to advocate for those rights, right? You don't want your favorite employee to be deported because she didn't receive proper access to legal services, or even, the trauma behind, kids or young people who are now getting into these industries, losing their parents due to notario fraud. So I think the advocacy point is important, and that's something that's easy, right? Like join, talk to your local CBO and see what they're doing, go to Congress, call your Congress members. There's so many ways. I can go on and on, but I think it's more important to just support the immigrant community.
That is so excellent and incredibly helpful. I think sometimes, when people listen to conversations or they read online, and I know, Lauren, you did such great work, with LOROD, throughout the pandemic and really connecting with communities. I think that it can become very overwhelming, and people can feel a sense of they can almost atrophy and go, well, there's so much I can do, that these problems are so big, my sort of involvement as an individual, either it won't be felt or I don't know where to begin. So the fact that you've been able to really lay that out and through those different tracks is key. And I also love that you spoke about the different contributions you can make sort of as an employee and also as an individual. I know a lot of us really rely on our workplaces to help sort of move the needle, but we as people, as we've seen in the last year and a half, especially, and after many, many years of the Black Lives Matter movement and hitting sort of like a critical mass last summer, we have seen that people want to get involved now more than ever. And whether it's, sort of in person or through digital support campaigns, fundraising, there's so many ways. And I think that the work you and Hispanic Federation are doing is so critical to that. And sort of continuing the discourse around the personal and the professional. ALBANIA, I know that you started as a Fashion Week volunteer. YAMILKA just spoke on volunteerism, and you've since launched your own business, and you work with all these members. I think there's over 200 members that you have. What advice do you have to those looking to become entrepreneurs? For the Latinx and Hispanic community, like what would you like to say to those really wanting to break out on their own? We've seen Lauren do it with LOROD, but for those of us who haven't yet, can you speak more on how that came to be?
Sure, absolutely. Well, going back from when I first came to this country, all I wanted to be was a model. I wanted to be in the runway shows. I was always looking at these top models, being part of the runway. And then I came to this country, and I see reality. This is a country of opportunities, but it's also a country where you face reality. Back then, the standards to be a models were very, very specific. And unfortunately for me back then, I didn't fit those requirements. But what that did to me was to open my eyes and see what more there is out there for me to explore. I wanted to be a model. This is all I wanted to do when I came here. That's the only thing that I was going to try to pursue. And then seeing that, the opportunities were not there, I said to myself, okay, I love this industry so much. What else is out there? What else can I do to stay in the industry that I love so much? And then I started seeking opportunities to stay within the industry, and I started working as a volunteer, and that led me to do everything. I mean, I had to work from behind the scenes to dressing models, organizing the seats, doing the seating chart, welcoming people, doing the front door, front of the house, back of the house. I mean, you name it, I did it, and I started to fall in love with the production aspect of the industry that I love so much. So then I'm saying that to say this. I wanted to be something so bad when I came here, and then it didn't work. It didn't specifically turn out for me the way that I wanted. But what I discovered throughout the process is that now it's really that wasn't really what God had for me. Now I am so much in love with what I'm doing because it's not only a job for me. What I'm most passionate about is that all the lives of the people that are part of this platform that I'm changing, whether I do my part, whether that's a little bit or a lot, at least I know that I have a little something to do with it. So for those out there who have their dreams and they have a vision, straight to yourself, focus in your vision. Don't take no for an answer. If something doesn't work in one aspect, don't fall behind because of it. And I know that sometimes we feel like we want to give up. I've been there many, many times. I mean, it's been 11 years. In this industry, I'm pretty sure all of you guys know, it is very competitive. It is a huge industry. And for me to be an immigrant, to be Dominican, not speaking the language and breaking through, it was a lot of work and it still is. And I know we still have a lot to go to and to learn. But as long as you stay focused, as long as you're true to yourself and you know that you can do it, don't let anyone or anything pull you down. And it's okay to feel down sometimes. We're only humans. The real challenge is how long would it take you to get back up and continue? That's where the difference is. How long we can feel down, we can fall, but that's okay. But the real challenge is how long would it take us to get back up and continue? And last but not least, success is not reserved for a few. Success is offered to everyone and anyone who's willing to learn and work hard for it and be persistent. So my advice is stay focused, continue to go, and don't let anyone ever tell you that you can accomplish something that you already envisioned in your head. Take it from this Dominican woman who came here to go to school and learn English. And here I am running a global platform that is helping people around the world and is making people's dream come true.
That is so major. We're just going to give a brief applause for you, ALBANIA. I think that's so, I wasn't expecting to be hit with a TED Talk that moved me this afternoon, but it's so powerful. And I love what you spoke about, you know, success and these resources. There's some love in the chat right now, which I think is a beautiful thing. It really is also fascinating to me and actually reminds me of my own, hi Rachel, it reminds me of my own path as well, you know, coming from the retail space, and it really helped me to become the professional that I am, you know, seeing something, as you said, you know, you started out with a goal and a dream in mind, and it didn't work out the way that you thought. And it can make you question the impact that you have, and it can make you question your purpose, but then you see it evolve when you see it through and you push it further. And now you're really helping others to make their goals come true, which I think is incredible, right? This thing that you first started wanting to do, this modeling and, you know, the modeling casting world, which is a whole other conversation for another Latinx panel. You know, we see it really evolve, and kudos to you. And I think that's so outstanding. And Lauren, I know that, you know, as we were prepping for today's conversation, you spoke about the work that you do with an organization called Corazon de Vida. I'd love if you can talk more about the organization and what you do with them, so that everyone can get up to speed and hear about it.
Yeah, they're a really wonderful organization that everybody should look up. I discovered them during COVID, actually, through a friend, because I was looking for places to donate masks. Essentially, I was making masks in LA and in New York, and then shipping them to my workers in New York, and then, you know, I had a ton of extra masks. I had made a lot of them, so I reached out to my friend, and she recommended Corazon de Vida, which is an orphanage that's based in Baja. And this woman, Hilda, who runs it, was an orphan herself, grew up, aged out of the system, and basically has been creating orphanages throughout Baja for these amazing children who have been otherwise abandoned, abused, etc. And they're just incredible. There's the cutest kids you've ever seen in your entire life. She welcomes people to come and visit them. But when speaking to her about the organization and where they felt like they needed support, there wasn't a space for the arts necessarily. It was more so like, we need, you know, Amazon shipments for like, you know, office supplies and toilet paper and these things, which, you know, like financially obviously is the main priority for them so they can keep the lights on. Which, like, you know, we're on board to like sort of make donations when we can, but I felt really strongly about there being some sort of like output, an outlet for these kids to output into in an artistic way. Because she had mentioned that a lot of these kids go through a lot of mental turmoil and depression and anxiety because of being left and abandoned. So she said, you know, there's a lot of mental illness, there's a lot of suicide attempts, and these are like children, you know, like between their newborn to 15, 16, and then I think 17 to 18, they kind of age out. But she said, you know, in order to keep these kids in a healthy mindset, they don't have a lot of stuff to like really sink their teeth into. And so we've been trying to work out an art therapy program for these kids to start. And they'd done a few with them, and she said it was incredibly impactful, and them journaling and having a space to like draw and talk about their feelings. And that was such an incredible thing for me growing up. And it's such a reason why I am where I am now, I think. Having that outlet to sort of pour yourself into when nothing else really works. So trying to figure out a way to get these kids to have hope and to have creativity and a space to do it and to be supported so that they have options like immigrating to the US and being designers, being artists, being creatives. Because, you know, I don't think that these opportunities the opportunities aren't going to present themselves by themselves in Baja and an orphanage. So trying to expand their world a little bit has been really inspirational to me and incredible to work with this foundation.
That's so impactful and moving. And I think, again, something that you've spoken on a few times today that's so important is really bridging that gap between arts and advocacy and arts and social responsibility and community support. I think a lot of times, and I'm sure we can all relate to this in different ways, sometimes it can feel like different things. You know, there's sort of this world over here in this industry that we work in, and then there's everything else outside of it, right? There's like that help that's over there, someone else is working on it. And I think there's so much intersectionality, again, going back to Yamilka's introduction, you know, to this word and to this theme that we've touched on throughout the conversation. So your support of Corazon de Vida is so interesting, and I think also speaks to a great way that brands can provide support in an actionable, sort of everyday, real life way. So congratulations to you and working with Hilda on that. So before we head into some Q&As, I know there's a question over here waiting to get answered. I wanted to finish up with a question for everybody to wrap up today's conversation, which is, you know, who are some Latinx and Hispanic artists, thought leaders, organizations that we should check out, so that listeners should check out, you know, whether it's following them on LinkedIn or Instagram, or buying, you know, their product and investing in their companies. I'm happy to kick it off, you know, briefly and say there are a few in particular. The first is I know he's listening and watching, my friend and colleague Aldo Araujo. He does an incredible a Latinx Heritage Month editorial series for CFDA, really helped CFDA kick that off. Does such an incredible job amplifying voices from the community. So I definitely recommend you checking out his work on the site. He does some beautiful, you're very welcome, Aldo, some beautiful storytelling. And then another organization that I want to highlight is La Nueva Linc, which is a digital community that helps to provide career and professional development resources and networking. And then I would say last but not least is just, you know, support and invest and buy Latinx and Hispanic brands, support your designers, make sure you're really putting your money where your mouth is, and whether that's through, you know, donation or through buying product. I think that's an incredible thing. So Yamilka, we'll start with you. Is there anyone you want to spotlight before we finish up today?
Sure. I actually want to highlight organizations, given that the work that we do is, you know, not one person. I'm sure all of these have great leaders. But outside of the Hispanic Federation, of course, there is the Center for American Progress, and I can put these when I finish. They do great research and reports on like the impact of citizenship for all, for example. So if anybody's interested on like the research and like information side, other organizations, national, such as the International Rescue Committee, currently they're doing a lot of amazing work with the Afghan refugees, given the Afghanistan crisis. Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. And then here in New York City, I would highlight the Coalition for Immigrant Freedom in Uptown, and Make the Road New York, which is cross town, so across mostly in Queens and Brooklyn, but do a lot of work. Mercy Center in the Bronx, and then NIMIC, which is the Northern Manhattan Improvement Corporation. All of these provide a myriad of immigration services, as well as a lot of expansive social services, you know, the topic on kind of holistic services for immigrants. And, you know, I would encourage everybody to look up, you know, see how they can volunteer, you know, donate if possible. We are always asking for money somehow, but it's always great. At least follow us on Twitter and, you know, make it happen. Make sure that you're supporting immigrant businesses. You know, your local street vendor is likely an immigrant, and I'm sure, you know, you get your tacos at the corner of 72nd and Broadway at late night. So support your immigrants.
I love that 100%. Thank you so much, Yamilka. And Albania, we're going to move over to you. Any individuals, artists, organizations you want to make sure spotlighted today?
Well, for those who know me, whenever I have the opportunity to speak about and highlight talent around the world, I will of course speak about the FDLA designers. And if I had the time today, I would talk about all 200 and something of them, because they're all amazing. But since we do have limited time, and I want to give Lauren also the opportunity, I'm not going to mention all 200 of them, but they're all amazing. But from the top of my head, I can recommend those to watch that are making a huge impact in the industry. Number one is Jirko Sivirich. He's a Peruvian artisan fashion designer who promotes his country, his culture throughout his collection. I think he's doing an incredible job, and I think he's gonna be, if not sooner than later, but soon, the next big name out there in the industry in his category. Also, another one is Toribio and Donato. These designers are from Costa Rica. Please definitely look them up and support them. They are sustainable fashion designers that are doing tremendous. They're making a huge impact in the industry with their garments, so that those are the ones that I feel that you guys should also look into. And one that I don't want to leave behind, it's Indira and Isidro. They are artisan jewelry designers from Mexico. These guys are doing amazing work, something that you have to see to believe. So from the back of my head, those three names out there, I want to throw in there because those are definitely the ones to watch in the fashion and design industry. And of course, all other 263 members of the FDLA, you can find them on the website, and you can make sure to take a look at them too.
So great. Thank you so much, Albania. And Lauren, we're going to finish up with you.
Yeah, I would like to sort of spotlight Natalia Mantini. She's a close friend, but she's also just an unbelievable artist, photographer. She shoots for the Times. And she, I think during COVID, started a company called Soulless Earth. I'll add it in the comments later, but it's this incredible growing library of resources for mental health support, for healing, for wellness. And it centers around BIPOC and LGBTQ communities, which is really special. There's like 24-hour phone support. There's, you know, contacts for therapy, meditation, healers, nutrition. It's just this beautiful center of resources, which I think during the pandemic, we all were, you know, had this feeling of how can I help? Where can I donate? Who can I call? And she reached out to the community and sort of gathered a ton of people to put in one place. Just a beautiful library that she's made.
So awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. And of course, before we get into the few questions that we have, please support Lauren Rodriguez and her work with LOROD, YAMILKA, MENA, and the Hispanic Federation, and ALBANIA, ROSARIO, and FDLA. Don't want to forget about our own speakers. And before we finish up, we did have questions. The first, I think I can answer. Can we get links to organizations to donate to, also to all of your businesses? Yes, Jackie, who is with us at CFDA, who's this CFDA logo over here in the panelist category, is going to help organize some of these resources that we'll send out to all of you. And thank you, Lauren, for adding in Natalia's information there. And Jamilka, I know that you also sent through some stuff too. And the question that we have here is for Albania. And the question is there a selection process for designers to be featured on the FDLA platform?
That's a great question, actually. Thank you very much. Yes, there is a selection. There is a 3-month process for designers to be part of the FDLA platform. But what we're looking for, most importantly, in each and every one of them, it's diversity. We want the designers to represent who they are in their countries throughout their work and their collection. And for those who are looking for more information, that's got to be like a whole different segment. They can find all these details in our website at fdla.co.
Excellent. And I know we had a question from someone that said, how do we contact you, Jamilka? We're going to be sharing, as long as everyone's comfortable, contact information to the organizations and companies that have been highlighted today. And, you know, we're at time. This was so excellent. Thank you so much, Albania, Jamilka, and Lauren. I'm so inspired by all of the work that you do. You know, Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month is a beautiful time not only to celebrate our cultures, but also the great contributions that we're making, you know, through our industries, through our communities, really touching on the intersectionality. We're more than one thing. We're not a monolith, and we support the diversity and the difference that we have in our community. So thank you all so much. Lots of love from me to all of you. And I'll send off and wave everyone goodbye. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Joseph.
Bye. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you.
Bye for now.